Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Crosshairs, the program on ThePrint where we discuss the big regional or national security issue of the week. I'm Praveen Swami, National Security Editor at ThePrint, and I'm joined today by the eminent Pakistani editor and journalist Murtaza Solangi, and by Mehtab Haider, who is Chief Economic Reporter at the Pakistani newspaper, The News. First of all, I'd like to thank you both for making the time to join us today. I know it's a busy day for you. Mehtab Sahab, I'll go straight to the point. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif announcing today that Pakistan has no option but to go for an IMF bailout. Politicians has been resisting this for weeks now. What has brought about the change of mind?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Actually, Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves are depleting, and the gross financing requirements estimated by the IMF and endorsed by the World Bank stands at $32 billion, out of which $23 billion is meant for paying the debt servicing, external debt servicing, and the remaining is to finance the current account deficit. So after passing the 6 and 7 months of this financial year, because in Pakistan, financial year starts in July and it ends on 30th of June. So after passing of 7 months, our economy has faced a disaster in the wake of severe floods. And after that, because of our reliance on imported items, our current account deficit and the external account problem is aggravating. At the moment, Pakistan's foreign exchange reserve stands at only $3.08 billion held by the State Bank of Pakistan. It's a matter of few weeks only now. After 3 or 4 weeks, we don't have any reserves. If there is no IMF for the next 5 months, we required $9 to $10 billion for repayment of our debt and for the managing the current account deficit. So the problem is huge, and there is no other option but to get and ensure the securing of the bailout package of the IMF. We resisted. Pakistan's finance minister Ishaq Dar has special love to manage the exchange rate. It was a floodgate which was broken with the severity of the water, and now in last 3 or 4 days we have witnessed that the exchange rate had depreciated massively. It stood at rupees 220 against US dollar. Today it crossed 278. It's almost 60 rupees depreciation just in a matter of 3 or 4 days. There was another demand of the IMF to raise the petroleum products because, we imported petroleum products, and there was an agreement with the IMF that we will impose a levy of rupees 50 per liter maximum limit. So we imposed it on the petrol, and on diesel, it stands at 40 rupees per liter. So we jacked up the POL prices by rupees 35 in case of petrol and diesel. There was another demand of the IMF now to raise the electricity tariff, and there is also demand of the IMF to impose the additional taxes. So it's a bitter pill which we will have to swallow. If we refuse to swallow, then the default is knocking at our doors.
Sure.
That's why Prime Minister now conceded to all these tough prescriptions suggested by the IMF.
Thank you so much, Murtaza. Politicians anywhere in the world don't like these IMF conditions because they mean hardship for ordinary people. They mean higher prices, more taxes. restrictions on government spending. And we saw Prime Minister Imran Khan in his own time ducking these issues on raising petroleum prices, announcing a lot of subsidies, and so on. I can assume, I'm guessing this was not an easy call for Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to take, saying that we're going to go down this road, especially perhaps with elections not too far down the road.
You're right. Politicians don't like decisions that would annoy the electorate, especially in an election year. That's true. But it's also a matter of fact that whatever the state of economy is, that's forcing them to agree to what Prime Minister Shehbaz today said, unimaginable conditions. They are responsible for the state of economic affairs whenever they are ruling directly, except for the years when we had military rule. Now, the problem is that our ruling elite is responsible for this state of affairs because they have been reaping a windfall of the strategic position of Pakistan during war on terror, and before that, the Soviet Afghan jihad. Our power elite has yet to realize that the world has moved on, and we are not that strategically important for them that somebody would bail us out. So at the end of the day, if Pakistan power elite does not go for a massive economic restructuring, I am afraid that more shameful conditions will knock on our doors, besides default that my friend just mentioned.
Mehtab Sahab, I want to go a little deeper into this question of Pakistan's dollar reserves. Now, since the 1950s, I think Pakistan has approached the IMF, if I'm not wrong, 22, 23 times for IMF support. Yet each cycle of these IMF bailouts or IMF assistance seems to just skip over the problem, and Pakistan is confronted with it again after a few years. Why is there this recurrent problem in layperson's language? Can you explain it for our listeners?
Yes, sir. Actually, the Pakistan's economy can be attributed as boom bust cycle. Whenever we don't have, we are unable to finance ourselves through maintaining or through promoting investment and savings. That is the major problem in Pakistan. So we will have to rely on foreign savings. So it actually increases our reliance on the foreign debt as well as the domestic debt to finance our internal deficit as well as the external deficit. So this boom and bust cycle, actually, when we increased our resources or external inflows, it helps us to boost up our GDP growth and economic activities promoted. But whenever it shrinks, it resulted into creating of twin deficits. That is called the current account deficit and the budget deficit. And as Shlangi Saab has mentioned, this lead capture basically the fiscal deficit is the result of this elite capture because our elite doesn't allow to bring itself under the tax net, and we love to involve into the spending spree. So we spend more, but we generate little. So that is the problem. And whenever our elite has so much money at their disposal, it resulted into increased our reliance on imports because they have the money. So they changed into the dollars and they brought different kind of things through import. It increased our import bill. And second problem is we have heavily reliant on imports of petroleum products and especially the electricity sector. It's also we didn't generate the electricity through indigenous resources. For instance, in last fiscal year, we had imported fuel of more than $10 billion. And on the same side, on agriculture, we are agriculture economy, but our import bill on agriculture is also more than $10 billion. So these two resulted into the creating of current account deficit to the tune of 17 to $80 billion. It's a huge. And on the other side, we are unable to bring our elites into the tax net, so they don't pay taxes, but they have so much money to spend. This kind of structure cannot be sustained on longer basis. So we will have to broaden our tax base. We will have to reduce the tax rates and we will have to broaden it. And we will have to ensure the competitiveness so that we can achieve the exportable surplus up to the extent that we can finance our imports. There is no other solution on short-term basis. There is a patchwork which we can done through the IMF. And whenever we face the balance of payment crisis, we approach the IMF. But Pakistan is known as a single or two tranche country in the committee of IMF and World Bank. So there is a need to bring a paradigm shift. We will have to be competitive. We will have to ensure the broadening of the tax base. Actually, everyone is paying taxes, but it's indirect taxes. Our indirect taxes 80 to 90%. There's a need to bring a paradigm shift. There's a need to bring each and every penny of the elite into the tax net. There is no other solution. Under the IMF program, we always done a patchwork. Window dressing now will not work. We cannot run this economy with the status quo. So we will have to bring the desired reforms, but reform doesn't mean that we will have to increase the tariff. Tariff increases will not provide the solutions. We will have to bring other structural reforms which will bring the elite and the affluent segments of our society into the tax net. We will have to increase our exports. We will have to reduce our dependence on imports. That is medium to long-term solution. But we are not moving towards that direction. That is the problem.
Murtaza Saab, you just, both of you have mentioned this issue of elite capture. You also spoke about this earlier. And I'm guessing one of the debates now I see unfolding in Pakistan is, this is great, the elite has made a mess, but who is to pay the bill for rectifying the mess? Is it to be ordinary people? Already some divisions within the ruling alliance on issues like privatizing loss-making public sector industries in like steel mills and so on. Former President Asif Ali Zardari apparently not very happy about some of these privatization measures. And I can imagine many ordinary people very worried that, look, we're already going through a terrible time making ends meet. Why should we pay the bills for these rich people making a mess? Would that be a fair characterization of the sentiment?
I think it is, because last year, our largest province, Punjab, that has a population of over 120 million people, and that's one of the most fertile lands of Pakistan, the food basket. The most modern agriculture, whatever we have, is in Punjab with higher yield, higher productivity. The total agricultural income tax collected in the province of Punjab was less than what a friend of mine, head of a pharmaceutical company, paid in taxes. This is the level. According to UNDP report, the subsidies provided to big elite and corporate sector, and including real estate, exceeded $17.5 billion. A country that was considered food basket of the region Now we have to import wheat. We have to import pulses. It's a matter of a shame for a nuclear state. So if you do not change your tax system, bringing in more direct taxes and taking out those subsidies, there is no way forward. Now, if my friend has more figures on the losses of the state-owned enterprises, those politicians who criticize privatization of those white elephants should also have some kind of alternative. If you cannot run those corporations and state-owned enterprises efficiently, and you are doling out tax rupees into those big potholes, you would only bleed the economy. So with their reservations apart, either you have to reform those institutions which we have failed, or you have to privatize them. There is no other option, because they are bleeding taxpayers' money like hell.
Mehtab Sahab, one further question on these power sector reforms. Now, this debate has been dragging on, if I remember correctly, since General Pervez Musharraf's time. And one of the things that was meant to happen was that with greater Chinese investment in the power sector, there were also measures promised to price electricity at an economic level and to try and solve this problem of circular debt, which for our audience is essentially people not paying power bills that are economical. That means power companies can't procure their energy, and debt goes on and on. Why did these efforts fail? What fundamentally went wrong with this critical issue?
Actually, this power sector bleeding is more than the defense budget spending in the last financial year. Defense budget, publicly known defense budget I am talking about. For instance, the power sector losses was 1,600 billion rupees in last financial year ended on June 30th, 2022. And the defense budget was only 1,400 billion. So the power sector losses were 200 billion more than the defense budget. Actually, the problem is that under the World Bank program, we unbundled the power sector, but it was not done properly and not up to the extent. For instance, our power sector is basically a recipe of piecemeal approach. For instance, we have established different distribution companies. There was a Genco, and then the distribution companies. But the problem is these distribution companies were not run on efficient basis, and actually it was meant that it would be privatized. So it was not privatized. Now the problem is this piecemeal approach is not working. And the second problem is our energy mix. Our reliance is on the furnace oil and the RLNG and the coal. Our 70%, more than 70%, power is generated through imported furnace oil, RLNG, and coal. And it's expensive because it's linked with the dollar. When we depreciated the exchange rate, it resulted into the hike of electricity tariff. Now, and the second problem is our losses. The losses of more than 90% discos are 40%, 30 to 40%. And the efficient discos losses are 10 to 15%. Maximum NAPRA is allowed, 70% losses are being absorbed. So the IMF and World Bank are suggesting or proposing or giving us prescription only to raise the tariff. But we are not doing the other structural reforms. For instance, if you ask the power sector people, they will give you different number after every hour. The number will be different. Why? Because there is whole supply chain, and there is a need to conduct a forensic audit to ascertain the exact losses of this cash bleeding power sector, because it cannot be sustained on forever basis. Uh, so it resulted because our power generation cost is more and our losses are high. So we are not receiving the cost recovery of those generated units. So it resulted into creating of the circular debt. And now the circular debt in last two decades and three governments. In 2008, when People's Party was ruling over Pakistan, under the IMF program, we raised the power tariff of almost 40%. And under the PMLN program, we again raised the power tariff 30 to 40%. Under this program, which was signed by the PTI, we had already raised the power tariff of 30 to 40%. So the power tariff is not resolving our problem. So we need to undertake a comprehensive approach and reform this whole sector. Either we should privatize it or we should establish public-private partnership, but it wouldn't work. The solution is privatize it. If and for instance, prepaid meters, why we cannot install prepaid meters? What is the problem? Because there is a leakage, there is a vision, and there is a vision of almost 500 billion to 1 trillion per year. But we parked it to different, we don't bring into the books. That is the problem. It cannot be run on sustained basis. So the solution is we will have to abandon this piecemeal approach, and we will have to devise a comprehensive medium to long-term plan to overhaul this sector, because it cannot run on sustained basis with this kind of piecemeal approach.
Murtaza, I was wondering how, you discussed this in an earlier episode of Crosshairs, but how this is going to play out politically. Now, Prime Minister Imran Khan, during his years in office, had made a big prestige issue of this whole IMF thing and Gairat and so on and so forth. In your view, as a political observer, is going back to the IMF and this economic chaos, is it going to strengthen Imran's hands, or are people able to see where this entire problem actually began?
I'm not sure, because Imran initially in his, when he became prime minister in 2018, tried to stay away from IMF, but then had no option because of the structural issues of economy that Mehtab just mentioned. Boom and bust cycle. So then they had to go to IMF. Now, before the vote of no confidence, when he knew that his government is about to fall, he somehow sabotaged IMF program and it was suspended. When the oil prices in the international market was going up, he reduced the petroleum prices, and he also frozen the power rates. So basically, he caused a lot of economic damage before he left office. But now, when the IMF program was resumed, when Mr. Ismail was finance minister, after that, we had a change of the portfolio, and again, we are in a state of limbo. But Imran Khan is on record saying that Pakistan has no option. Even a blind man with somebody who is not too bright would agree that Pakistan has no option but to go to IMF. He would criticize, and he is criticizing, that this 7-8 months government is responsible for the economic mess. Now, it will be a test of the political leadership. Who persuades electorate? Who is responsible for the economic mess? Would it be the current coalition government that would succeed, or Imran Khan? It also depends upon the state of PTI's, leadership that's implicated in several cases, including Imran Khan, who might land in jail, who might be even disqualified. So it all depends upon the strength of Imran Khan's party. If he if he ends up in jail and he stands disqualified, and if his party splits, then probably they would not be in a position to take advantage of it. Otherwise, the popular pulse is that probably in the province of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where we have almost 80% of the total voters of the country, that might benefit him. Maybe he can win a landslide. Maybe he can get a 2/3 majority. But that would not be first time in Pakistan's politics. Nawaz Sharif became prime minister twice with 2/3 majority, and he was thrown out, like, in 99 and in 2017. So if in Pakistan's power equation, if you fall out with establishment, no matter how popular you are, if you are not, you don't have good relations with the establishment, no matter how popular support you have, it will be tough for you to govern.
I'll give you the last word, Mehtab Saab, and this is a bad time for the world. And I have two questions, if you like, as this parts of this last question. The first is, after entering into an IMF program, a lot of people or media in Pakistan have been saying money will come from China or from Saudi Arabia, wherever. But all these countries are having difficulties of their own in this post-COVID environment. So do you believe this money will really come, or we are going to have tough times? And secondly, what will the impact of this continuing and endless war in Ukraine be, as Pakistan seeks to improve its exports and sort out its economy?
Yes, actually, the rising inflation in many developed parts of the world, especially after the COVID and eruption of Russia-Ukraine war, it also creates problem for many other developed countries, as well as in this region and many countries which were supposed to help the Pakistan. And another message is quite loud and clear. For instance, Saudi finance minister in his one of the interview, he said that when we are slapping taxes on our in our own country, so we expect that the same path will follow those countries to which we used to give the grants and the deposits. So the message is quite loud and clear that we will have to secure the IMF program. There's no other option. And IMF program clearly indicates that it will take care of all the external sector requirements of the program period. So it is hoped that if the IMF program will be revived, the external financing will be managed, because IMF program basically means that the whole world, especially the multilaterals and the bilaterals, are seeing the IMF stamped approval as guarantee that this country's debt and external sector is sustainable and it's not going to default. So it's hoped that it will be done. But we will have to manage our economy by ourselves. We will have to ensure our increased reliance on the non-debt creating inflows, for instance, boosting up exports, as well as the remittances, for which we will have to develop the skills of our workforce. On your second question, it's a move that we should procure or get cheap oil from Russia. Negotiations recently they have visited, and we have shown our interest. But let's see, because it depends that how we will proceed with the IMF, and with the blessing of the United States, it requires uh, uh, United States supports to get the IMF package, especially from the approval of the executive board of the IMF. So let's see, fingers crossed. It depends that how the IMF program proceeds. It is hoped that the policy level talks with IMF will be concluded by 9th of this month. And if staff level agreement will be signed, then it also requires 2 to 3 weeks to get approval of the executive board. And keeping in view the depleting foreign exchange reserves, we don't have the money, but if this ongoing parleys did it end on any positive note or striking a staff level agreement, then the problem or the crisis will trigger. So the next few days are very important in this case of IMF talks.
So thank you so much for your time, Mehtab Sahab. Pleasure always to have you back, Murtaza, and I hope we'll be seeing more of you also, Mehtab Sahab, on this program. All I, as I speak to old friends in Pakistan, just wish you good luck in the days ahead. And we'll be discussing this in detail, this financial crisis, with our listeners on Crosshairs at ThePrint in coming days and weeks. Thank you, and see you again next week.